Now, Max Verstappen didn't treat GP and the whole team that nicely on the radio in the Hungarian Grand Prix. But someone has to ask why. Now, I will be that person. I think the answer is actually in the question. He didn't treat the team nicely. Well, the answer is because there isn't a team. There is just Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen owns Red Bull. Without Max, that organization will crumble. Max calls the shots. Max makes everything tick. Without Max Verstappen, Red Bull are not Red Bull. Now, if you are wondering why I'm saying this, let me turn your attention to his amazing, illustrious, the quickest there is, his teammate, Sergio Perez. Now, after the first couple races of the season, where Sergio Perez tricked us into thinking he was going to have a good season, when in reality, he was just benefiting off the fact that the car was 20 seconds ahead from any other competitor, when the car was even slightly competitive. Let's see what Sergio Perez was doing, shall we? In Imola, he got knocked out in Q2 and finished P8. Max Verstappen was fighting for the win, and he won that race. In Monaco, he was out in Q1 because he crashed out turn 1. Oh wait, that was last year. This year, he just decided to be slow. He then decided to get caught up in an incident which admittedly was not 100% his fault, but you know what was his fault? The fact that he was there in the first place. In Canada, he was knocked out in Q1 because you have to keep the streak going, and he had a DNF because he decided, you know what, my race isn't going as badly as I thought it would. Let me make it worse. And so he decided to change his rear wing to improve aerodynamic ability. In Spain, he qualified P8 and ended up P8, making literally zero progress. Zero progress. While his teammate won the race and was facing increasingly more competition from the McLarens and the Mercedes at this point, who are starting to pick up pace. In Austria, he qualified P8, which was a good, showing from him, seeing as he seems to make it an achievement getting out of Q2, and then decided to finish P7. Now, you might think he made some progress. He moved up a place in the field. Wrong. Norris got a DNF because he was fighting with his teammate, Max Verstappen, for the win, while Sergio Perez was diddling... Can't say that on YouTube. While Sergio Perez was playing with his fucking nutsack 20 seconds behind. As if this wasn't enough, he spun out in his outlap. I repeat that again. He spun out in his outlap in Great Britain and then decided to finish P17 in Silverstone. Now in Hungary, after the first set of laps that they did in Q1, he was actually in a really good position, being in P10. The gap is however many tenths, there are about 6 or 7 cars below him. You know what? Sergio Perez is going to get into Q2 wrong. He decided it's time to slap it into the barriers once again and not start from a half-decent position. So to answer the question, why is Max Verstappen so angry? Max Verstappen is angry because as the season's gone on, his car has only gotten slower. The McLarens have only gotten faster. They have 2 teammates against his 1. Adrian Newey is leaving. He is not going to contribute to the car for the second half of the season. Their wind tunnel time means that it's going to be increasingly harder for them to add performance onto the car. For some reason, Mercedes decided to remember who they are, and Lewis Hamilton has decided he wants to actually start racing. And so now it's becoming increasingly hard to bag easy points and easy podiums. And his last semblance, his last hope, having a semi-competitive teammate, is out the window because the only person they could hassle was Sergio Perez, who is unarguably Max's worst teammate ever. Gasly was never this bad. Albon was never this bad. Daniel Ricciardo was good. In fact, you can get Daniel Kvyat to be better than Sergio Perez. Sergio Perez has been terrible from the day he joined Red Bull. In 2021, he masked that with 2 or 3 decent performances, essentially holding up Lewis Hamilton in Turkey, in Abu Dhabi, and in Brazil for a time. That's what he did to mask it. In 2022, he sucked. He was so far off the lead, and I'm pretty sure nearly lost. No, he did lose the battle to Charles in the Drivers' Championship. In 2023, with the most dominant car in history, he sucked so hard. He was so bad that he still nearly got caught by a guy that hadn't won in 2 years at the time and was in one of the worst periods in his career. Sergio Perez is the living definition of it's not just the car, because clearly you need competent drivers. And don't give me this nonsense about they make driving styles. No, driving styles is not the reason why someone is so bad they managed to make Q1 their home. Driving styles is not why Logan Sargent has outqualified Sergio Perez 4 times out of the last 6 races. Logan Sargent is still yet to outqualify Alex Albon. Logan Sargent is not going to have a seat for next year. He is truly the Mexican minister of what is wrong with you. How are you this slow? It doesn't make any sense. Even when he is in a position where he cannot fail, like in Hungary in qualifying, where he was safe at the time by a half-decent margin, for some reason, Sergio Perez decides, you know what, I think it's time to crash, because I can't help my team. And the only reason he has that seat, well, the only 2 reasons, is 1, because of his commercial aspect in the Americas, which is nonsense and proves that F1 is not completely about talent. And 2, because Red Bull are too scared to let go of another second driver because of the ghastly reputation that they've had with Alex and with Gasly. But do you know what? Do you know what is really funny? Just imagine a world in which Red Bull gave this much of a chance to Albon. Imagine the driver that they would have on their hands. Imagine if they gave this much of a chance to Gasly. Imagine if they gave this much of treatment, this nice level of treatment to Daniel Ricciardo. Maybe he wouldn't have left. Maybe they wouldn't have kicked them out and are left with a situation in which they have to push the red nuclear button to exit and eject Sergio Perez from the team to have a chance, yes, a chance of staying in the Constructors. Within 5 rounds, McLaren are going to be ahead. I assure you, they are going to be ahead in 5 rounds. And from there, it is going to be a toss-up. If Sergio Perez is still in the car, Red Bull can choose to keep their driver or save the championship. And in fact, Red Bull are lucky, because if I was McLaren, I would not have switched places. I would have allowed Norris to eke out every single point that they get from Red Bull. Every single point. Because Verstappen is cracking. Because all it takes to break Red Bull is to have one bad weekend for Verstappen. If Verstappen gets a DNF, Red Bull get no good points that weekend. I repeat, if Verstappen gets a DNF, Red Bull's weekend is over. There is no help. Verstappen is going to be undercutted, overcutted. The Mercedes are going to snack points off him. You're lucky Russell wasn't in the fight in Hungary, because Verstappen would have finished even lower. There is truly no chance for a team that is going to get slower, and even with the pace they have, cannot fight in the championship. Why can't they fight? Because they are putting all the pressure on Max Verstappen. Yes, Max is going for live or die moves. Yes, Max is at his wit's end, but he has to, because if Max doesn't do it, no one will. If Max doesn't go for the move and get that position, no one's going to pick up the pieces. This isn't like OG Mercedes, in which Hamilton could somewhat trust Bottas to collect the points. This isn't like when you have Red Bull and Sebastian Vettel dominating, where Sebastian Vettel just wins all the time. This isn't like 2023, in which Max could just win 6 more races in a row. Max is going to lose the championship if his car does not increase in pace significantly. Every time Max engages in a battle with McLaren, McLaren always benefits. They always benefit. Every single time. Even when they don't win in Canada, for example, McLaren still benefit. McLaren still came out of that weekend as a team better. And in the debrief, they're going to be talking about all sorts of different things, and maybe Sergio was, but it won't matter, Because in Max Verstappen's head, he's thinking, how am I going to fight the Red Bulls? Why? Because Sergio Perez sucks. Sergio Perez doesn't deserve to be in F1 anymore. And you might be asking, why are you so harsh? Because I said this from the start. All I wanted was a meritocracy where the best drivers get to be in the best teams. But for some reason, when it is time to put the correct drivers in the correct teams, all of the F1 teams put their fingers in their ears and close their eyes. Well, you know what? You can't close your eyes to this. Red Bull are going to lose the championship, and I am here for it. I'm here for every second of it. I don't mind Max Verstappen winning the Drivers' Championship, but I am 100% here for them losing the Constructors. I need everyone to see how bad of a decision it is to give Sergio Perez a seat in F1. Unreliable, inequipped to cope with the pressures of being on a podium. Because really and truly, if Sergio Perez was on a podium, he would still have safe employment. But he can't do that. If Sergio Perez was P5 every race, this would be a completely different conversation. P5. Mercedes was struggling. Lewis Hamilton, at the start of the year, was struggling to finish within the top 10. He has now just overtaken Sergio Perez in the championship. I'm going to repeat that again. Lewis has just overtaken Sergio in the championship. I didn't understand it when I saw, because it doesn't make any sense. This guy is so astronomically bad, and Christian Horner is going to make every excuse under the sun with him. Why? Because PR is a very powerful thing, and Red Bull have been painted into villains. Not only that, they also love money. So combine those two factors, and you have a team that is reluctant to let go of a driver because they don't want to seem like bad guys and they don't want to mess with the money. But there are people out there like Yuki Tsunoda. There are people out there like Alexander Albon. There are people out there like Carlos Sainz and Fernando Alonso that deserve to be in cars like that Red Bull. Even when that Red Bull isn't the fastest, they still deserve to be in a car like that. They deserve to be way higher up the field. I am sick and tired of seeing Fernando Alonso battling in the midfield and lower midfield and getting frustrated at his engineer. I'm sick and tired of having Alexander Albon having terrible strategies, but Sergio Perez, with the best strategist in the grid, cannot muster a decent result. And you might say that Hungary was a decent result. And I'm going to say it wasn't a decent result. You know why it wasn't a decent result? Because you don't get props for climbing out of the hole you dug in the first place. You don't get props for that. I'm not allowed to create problems, solve my own problems, and then say, wow, I'm so great for that. No, you would have been great if you didn't give yourself those problems. The best race is a boring race. The best race is when Max Verstappen starts from pole position and wins by 20 seconds. A boring race. Do you know what isn't a good race? Starting from P20, making it to P8, and calling that an amazing drive. Do it all again next week. No. That is how you lose the championship. That is how you lose it. If I had a magic wand and I could zap 5 drivers out of Formula 1 right now, Sergio Perez would be number 2 on that list. And the only reason he's not number 1 is because Stroll is just... Actually, let me correct myself. He would be number 1 because Stroll has been outperforming Fernando Alonso recently. Sergio Perez would be the first driver I would eliminate from the grid. This man really has 0 redeeming qualities. There is nothing over the past 4 years you can tell me Sergio Perez has genuinely done other than a couple of defensive moves that have helped Red Bull. They didn't win the Constructors in 2021 despite having the faster car. Fight me on it. And that was Sergio Perez's fault. They won it in 2022, but they could have won it with just Max. Same thing with 2023. They didn't require a second driver to win it then. Red Bull have had a problem with the second driver. Do you know what they've really had a problem with? They've had a problem with decision making. They haven't had a problem with actually picking drivers because they can pick a driver with talent. Red Bull can pick a driver with talent. Think of all these drivers. Daniel Ricciardo, Alexander Albon, Pierre Gasly. All these drivers have talent. And I do believe all these drivers can cut at the top of the grid. But for some reason, they've had such a severe lapse in management. When they bought Sergio Perez, when they got him into the team, he seemed like the safe bet. He was a very experienced driver that everyone thought, you know what, he's going to be the stability that Max needs. Maybe he doesn't have the outright pace of Max, but his consistency is there, and he is always there to support and overtake and do this and do that. Well, he has done none of that. Sergio Perez has delivered on nothing. He absolutely has not delivered on anything. There is not a single thing. This is for all you Sergio Perez fans. Tell me a single thing that would have been changed, right? That would have really been changed about the whole Red Bull timeline from since Sergio Perez came to Red Bull, other than the fact that he defended for Max in Abu Dhabi. Tell me one thing that Sergio Perez has done that has given an impact to Red Bull. Because he didn't contribute to the constructors, that's for sure. Max would have won that on his own, maybe twice over. He didn't contribute in 2023 to the constructors, that again, twice over. Neither to the drivers' championship either. So he didn't help Max win the drivers. He didn't help him win the constructors. In fact, the most he's done is try and sabotage Max with the whole thing in Monaco, when he tried to fraud his teammate out of a pole position. Maybe you might think I'm bad for this, and you might think I'm a hater. And to that, I say 100%. 100%. I have waited for years for Yuki Tsunoda to get a chance on merit. I have heard people lambast him. I've heard people make criticisms that simply aren't true about him. Simply aren't true. And for some reason, Sergio Perez still gets defended. Whilst whenever someone talks about Yuki Tsunoda, Christian Horner's hitting the interviews with the, you know what I mean? You know, it's the, shut up. Hire the man. You need him. You clearly need him. And now they're talking about replacing Sergio Perez. They're talking about Daniel Ricciardo? What? That doesn't make any sense. Daniel Ricciardo has not been on the level of Yuki Tsunoda the whole year. He hasn't been. There is no universe where you look at this year as a whole and think Daniel Ricciardo has been on the level of Yuki Tsunoda is a decade younger and has been a step ahead every single time they've stepped into the car. Every single time. Even when he crashed out in qualifying, he still scored points in the race. He still did that. And you mean to tell me what? That Daniel Ricciardo? But you know what? Do you know who said at the start of the year that Daniel Ricciardo only needs to perform 2 or 3 times for Red Bull to consider him for the seat? Do you know who said that? I did. Because I knew this was not about performance. They got him in that car knowing that they were never going to consider Yuki Tsunoda. And I am happy that Red Bull are going to lose the championship because of the nonsense they've pulled. Because there is a serious chance that Yuki Tsunoda will not have a seat in 2026. There is a serious chance. And the only reason they've kept him in 2025 is because Perez has done so badly. And let's keep it a spade a spade. Perez didn't just do kind of badly. Perez is doing so badly, you could literally stick Logan Sargent in that seat, and there is a good chance Logan would out-qualify where Perez is currently qualifying, and he could out-race where Perez is currently racing. I mean, it's not hard. Perez is spending most of his time battling Haas's, Sauber's, Williams. Is this the team? Is this the teams that Red Bull are fighting against? No, they aren't. It's coming to a point. Sergio Perez has been lapped a number of times this year by his teammate. It's quite normal for Max Verstappen to be multiple pit stops ahead of Sergio Perez. Sergio Perez can make the most impact to Max Verstappen by not getting out of the way for Lando Norris as a back marker. As a back marker. That's what he's doing. That's the worth of Sergio Perez. Sergio Perez is absolutely worthless to Red Bull. He's worth nothing. There is nothing Sergio can do. There is no win Sergio can win now that would erase the damage he's done this year. Because the damage is done. Don't get it twisted. The damage is done. Sergio Perez can put on his best performance. That car is no longer 20 seconds ahead of the field. They should have capitalized whilst the car had performance. This was very similar to Daniel Ricciardo in 2021, in which, although Ferrari got 3rd place in the championship, that was McLaren's to keep and to hold. But because Daniel Ricciardo bottled it for them, McLaren lost 3rd place in the championship. And although he kind of recovered it with his win and stuff like that, you can't get back those points. You already DNF'd. You already came P17 a number of times. And the strange thing about that statement, you already came P17 a number of times. You don't know if I'm talking about Sergio Perez or Daniel Ricciardo. But the funny thing is, I was talking about both. Sergio Perez sucks. And I'm not going to pretend he doesn't suck. I'm going to embrace he does. Because there are drivers that don't suck that are going to leave the sport. There are drivers that don't suck that will never ever get to F1 because they don't have the finances. And that is a damn shame. So you know what I can do? The ones that do stay in F1, that don't deserve to be in F1, I can hope they leave. Good night. I'll see you at the next race.